There he is,
Hello, sir.
looking fresh to death, pal.
Let me get this thing sorted out here. How am I going to do this quickly?
Listen, that's the only thing Cape Town has that's much better than Durban is probably a sense of style. Other than that, your city is just not as beautiful as ours.
While we're on this topic, this morning I was sent a video
Yeah,
of a snake catcher pulling a
yes,
black mamba out of a truck in Durban.
yes,
So um, so when we come in, so we also don't have black mambas, and they definitely whatever snakes we have aren't in the like inner city.
yes.
Um, but we'll start with the fashion thing, I suppose. But
Yeah, look,
there's many redeeming qualities to Cape Town.
it's just a regular Tuesday for us. Yeah, black mambas. We have a lot of monkeys that are scouring the trees. This is like Middle Earth of South Africa, I think. So,
I miss it
but
though. I've always told you I love Durban. But I do miss it. I love it for a week and then I fall out of love with it.
so how long has it been since you've been in Durban? Have you counted?
The last time I was in Durban was when was your wedding anniversary? Yesterday?
Yes, correct. No, you're lying.
Yesterday? Yeah. That's how long ago I was in Durban. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Okay, so then you owe our beautiful city a visit. It's long overdue.
I do indeed.
So obviously, thanks Ryan for coming on to Instagram Live with me. Obviously, I've done
Absolute pleasure, man.
a few different videos. Obviously, I've known you for my entire career. I think you had just started out your career. You were a little bit ahead of me in terms of
Mm.
how your journalism career started. Um, so yeah, I've kind of known you my whole life through SA Rugby, and I know I've done a few interviews with you, and obviously we've shared a lot of common interests, and obviously through the years we've created a friendship. So it's obviously nice to have you on. You're definitely an interesting person, a lot more creative than I am, a lot more creative than I am. So I thought it's a wonderful way for.
You were blessed with the motor skill to be able to play professional sport. You can't have everything, bruh.
Yes, I know. I mean, God only gives certain people a certain amount. So,
Yeah.
so maybe a good way to start is maybe your journey, where you grew up, how you got into journalism. Yeah, maybe just give a snapshot of who Ryan VREDE is. I think everyone
Yeah.
knows you as the journalist, but obviously you can say what happened before that.
Right. So I grew up, born and bred in Cape Town. Um, incidentally, maybe this is why I've got an affinity with the city, right? So incidentally, my dad got a job in in Durban, just after I was born, and they moved up there for 2 years. So the first 2 years of my life was spent there. And
Wow.
so maybe that's where my affinity for the city comes from. But moved back here,
Okay.
grew up in Cape Town in the like on the Cape Flats in a suburb called Athlone, and went to school there as well. And went to high school the first year that schools opened up after kind of apartheid,
Yeah.
and you could go to well, technically you could go to any school you wanted to. Went to a formal Model C school, and done my high school there, and then I really didn't know kind of what I wanted to do after that. I done a what was it? A BA with in English with my major being communication science. I done like 2 years or 3 years, I can't even remember, but I realized quickly that it wasn't teaching me the things that I wanted to learn, right? And so I dropped out like my third year or something, or 2.5 years in, and that was a hard conversation to have with my mom about like wanting to change over and then to study journalism.
Yes.
And so that's what I did. I think I may have been like 25, 26.
Yeah.
So it was a hard conversation to have with her. And then I studied journalism, and immediately I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, it's what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to
Yeah.
tell stories, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like it's a gift that I've got. I've always wanted to tell
Yeah.
stories. I just didn't know the technical skills. I didn't have the technical skills to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So that's where that all started. And I mean, we're going to speak a little bit about how I like kind of got in my career. But that's the foundation of what happened there.
Mm. I think it's obviously it must have been a difficult chat for your parents to have, especially with you at that time, because I think post apartheid they always want you to do everything and more, and probably stuff they couldn't accomplish in their lives because of apartheid. So
Yeah,
trying to manage their expectation of what they want from you, and also trying to tell them, listen, I've got a feeling I want to go a different way. It must have
right.
been a difficult chat initially.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point. And I mean, so there's a level of expectation. There was a level of expectation for our generation specifically, because of what you mentioned right now.
Yeah.
So the key is always opportunity, right? It's like when people speak about the quota system and all of those
Mm,
types of things. Like it like grates me a little bit because
mm,
it makes it a race thing, but it should be an
yeah.
opportunity thing, right? It's an
Yes.
opportunity. So the opportunity was there,
Mm,
and that put a lot of pressure. Looking back now, that put a lot of pressure on that particular generation and the generations after that, because the opportunity was there. Now you shouldn't mess it up, kind of thing. And
yes.
and so to my mom's credit, she was pretty supportive. I mean, that conversation was hard, and I had to do a lot of convincing there. But
Mm,
she's in the same way that she's pretty strong-willed. I am too. I knew what I
mm,
wanted to do,
mm,
and so the like the and I think that kind of she understood that afterwards, um,
yeah.
and um, and also I was taking full responsibility for my own studies. I paid for my own studies.
Mm,
And I mean, we got a loan from from my mom's boss at the time, which we had to
mm,
pay back later,
mm,
and which I paid back later when I started working. And so that was always the agreement. So it was always my responsibility. So I was
yes.
effectively, it was my choice. And
Yeah.
so I rolled the dice there, bro, and I just went for it,
And in terms
and
of
it worked out. Yeah,
sometimes life just works out the way you want it to. I wish you had a
yeah,
crystal
absolutely.
ball to see ahead, but I mean, it takes a lot of obviously conviction and belief in yourself, which I'm sure at a young age is quite tough when you're saddled with all that burden of now I've made my decision. Now I've got to make sure I make something out of this decision to make my family proud, which I can imagine can carry a heavy weight. And not only just your mom, your extended family, and everyone looking up to you to maybe be a pioneer for something different, something they haven't seen.
Mm. Right. Again, like a really interesting point, and I've only got that perspective later in life. As you get a little bit more
Mm,
emotionally mature,
mm,
you start to understand yourself and how other people see you as well.
mm,
And the point that you raise is so critical because I play cricket at a community cricket club. My cricket
mm,
club is in an area of Cape Town called Q Town. Bro,
mm,
it's
mm.
ghetto. It's hard,
Yeah.
and and at this stage of my life, I started to realize, or maybe a couple of years ago, started to realize that the young kids there were watching me.
Mm.
Not
Mm.
there's nothing to watch about my cricket that's worth
I
watching.
think you're being very
But my life,
humble. We
nah, I
won't go
promise
into
you.
your storied cricket career, but yeah, you obviously a very talented sportsman in your own right.
There's there's many stories off the cricket field that are worth talking about, but we won't talk about them now. That's where my
Yes.
legend is born. Anyway, but
Yeah.
but I started to notice that the kids at my cricket club were paying special attention to my life.
Mm.
Just by the virtue of what I was doing professionally. I was in the public eye, specifically the
Mm.
rugby public eye.
Mm.
And I mean, that piques their interest because, I mean, whether you like it or not, the exposure was the thing that was the most interesting part for
Mm.
them about what I did, right? Um, and
Yeah.
so and so I started to realize that my part of my life philosophy is to live beyond yourself. You got to live beyond yourself, right?
Mm.
Otherwise, what is the point
What is the
of
point? Yeah.
what's the point of doing this? Yeah. And I was always very cognizant of this
Mm.
fact that these kids were watching me.
Mm.
And that's kind of where it kind of hit home for me
Mm.
that over and above what my family's expectation was, what my friends' expectations were, what my colleagues' expectations were, um, that was the most critical thing for me because you only can aspire to be something that you see, right?
Mm.
And so you only know what you know effectively.
Mm.
So by them seeing me come from the same or similar communities as them, or playing at the same cricket club as they are,
Mm.
it eliminates that kind of barrier, that mental barrier that they've got
Mm.
that goes that's so far away, we can't do that now. But here's somebody that's interacting with us every single Tuesday, Thursday, and
Mm.
Saturday, and beyond that as well. And
Mm.
he's doing that. And why can't we? Because why can't they? And
Mm.
of course the opportunities must come, and there's I mean, like, unbelievable obstacles for some of these kids.
Mm.
But I'm their reference point. And some of the other
Mm.
guys at my club as well that have made good professional, um, built good professional careers for themselves and good lives.
Mm.
We're their reference points, and that's the most important thing. Not over and above my family's expectations, because that's key.
Mm.
But for those kids to see something that they can aspire to is
Mm.
important for me.
And I think it's quite inspiring because, like you said, these kids are not exposed to what they can be or what their potential actually can be. And
Mm,
we live in a bubble. I mean, I wish as professional sportsmen we had more of a role in terms of community and how we could um, integrate how the community and how you aspire them. And I think a lot of rugby players lose touch of that. And I'm not saying I for one was very close to my community, but when I listen to you, that's exactly how I would have wanted to do it. To people to see,
sure.
listen, here's a guy that's broken through a mold, and he's achieving, and he's a professional in his field, and he's showing what you can do. But just to have that sense of community, I think is very inspiring, and a lot of people don't get that opportunity, and you had that opportunity. I think you only
Right.
hung up your boots or your cricket bat or whatever you want to call it, your spikes, at a much later stage. So, I mean, they've kind of
Right.
been part of that journey with you, which I mean would have been
Right.
a great support structure beyond your family and your parents and that. You kind of had the community also behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm still involved there. I still play from time to time. And but kind of my focus has shifted now. Like I wanna help the process of building men,
Mm.
and as opposed to building cricketers, because
Mm.
good cricketers will be a byproduct of good men. And so the
Absolutely.
talent will always be there, but there's got to be something like real to sustain these kids beyond cricket, you know. And so my whole ambition at my club is to try and build men, and to do that with whatever tools and resources I have, whether that's um, whether that's connections that I've made, that assist in getting financial resources, or whether that's like an importation of like life experience.
And if you had removed yourself, it must be quite scary. If you remove yourself from that bubble and you never went to this club and you never exposed these kids to it, if you think about how many kids have had the opportunity or maybe gone on to play professional cricket or maybe join squads, it just it obviously makes you proud that you could have done that. But obviously, as a community, we need more of these engagements
Yeah,
to inspire these young men to think, live past what their expectations are. But I have to agree
right.
with you on the one point, because I mean I always tell my students, um, our elite sportsmen, we want them to have professional careers, but obviously that's a really tiny percentage that goes on to have a
That's right.
professional career. So for me,
Yeah,
creating better individuals that can contribute to the world after school, that for me is more important than if you become a springbok, or you know what I mean. So trying
right.
to explain to them there's more than what they think. Oh, yeah, rugby career is great and you want to be a professional whatever you do, but there is different ways you can impact the world in a positive capacity.
Right. And I don't envy you, because this generation is also a little bit different from some of the ones that came before, right? And so part of that is a sense of entitlement,
Mm,
especially if you're talking about young, um, gifted sportsmen, and even
mm,
like some that are moderately gifted. There's
mm,
just this sometimes irrational belief that they're gonna go all the way, that they're gonna have a long pro career, and that's gonna be their life, right?
mm,
And so to try and not only instill the values that you're looking for, but then
mm,
also to fight against the current of what the culture is at the moment, like
yeah.
this culture of entitlement, this
Mm,
culture where like a sense of apprenticeship is not
mm,
something that is valued so much as what it was in previous
mm,
years.
mm,
And that was such a critical. I mean, you came up in at the Sharks with some like hardened guys there,
mm,
and you had to earn your stripes there. You played
mm,
in Sharks teams with John Smith. Percy Montgomery was there at the time. I mean,
yes.
I can go on, and AJ Fenter. I mean, I can go on and on with
Mm,
it. But and there was an apprenticeship that needed to be served, even though
mm,
the Sharks team, especially the one in 2007, was quite a young team, but there was
mm,
still like veterans there, and a lot of them
mm,
that went on to win the World Cup later that year. So
yeah.
so yeah, so that those things, trying to balance those things, I don't envy you, but it's the same in our career, in my profession. Young
Mm,
writers that are coming up, young sports journalists that are coming up,
mm,
think that they've got the right to an opinion. And
mm,
everyone's got a right to an opinion, but whether your opinion is informed or not is what separates the good journalists from the average ones. And you've got
mm,
to earn the right in the same way that you as a pro sportsman during your career had to earn the right to opportunities, to say
mm,
certain things in the change room, to have your voice heard. All of those things are the
mm.
same in my profession.
And yeah, maybe we can go back. You obviously, when you first made your break into let's call it the big time journalism, obviously the writer you were in the beginning is not the writer that you are currently. And it's like any person that's in a profession, you kind of grow as you go along and you learn and you adapt and you gain leadership and apprenticeship from different people. How you gather that information to mold yourself into your personal, who you are as a person, trying to stay true to yourself must have been difficult. So initially, how did you go about obviously being introduced? You suddenly now writing these big stories. Who kind of mentored you? How was your early experiences when you started writing bigger articles and joining SA Rugby, or maybe even before that?
Right. So I had to. So my career developed, and my writing and my storytelling developed as my life developed, as I went through things in life, learned from them, made mistakes, all of those types of things then reflected in the way I was writing and storytelling, right? And so that was what fundamentally like kind of shaped the journalist I am now. And at the start of my career, and there's many similarities like to what I'd imagine a pro sports environment would be. I came in quite abrasive and like a level of self-belief that wasn't in keeping with my ability. And that reflected in not only my writing, but the way I responded to criticism as well. And I had to learn. It was a hard learning curve.
And that's a proper human condition. When you get criticized,
yeah,
defensiveness comes up. Meanwhile, there's those pearls of wisdom hidden in the criticism, or in your perceived mind how you're taking it. It's probably not intended by the person giving it to you.
Right. And my career just happened to coincide with the kind of boom in social media, and that brought a whole different dimension to sports journalism specifically, because now there were platforms, so people weren't just consuming your content, they were also feeding back on your content, which wasn't a reality for any of the journalists in the generation before me. And so that brought a whole new kind of dynamic to the game, so to speak. And people had access to you now, and there was and the platforms gave them this power to not control the narrative, but certainly try and shape the narrative. And so that was something that nobody could coach you, because none of the mentors that came before me, and we'll speak about some of them now, but none of the guys that came before me had experienced that, right? So they didn't have any of that. They didn't know how to do that. I mean, they would write a story in a newsroom. And when the newspaper went to print, that was that. And then the next morning they'd come back, do an interview. Kind of curvy at that stage of my career, that made it complicated, and what the main complexity was my personality. Which is quite out there and charismatic to start with, and quite, like I said, at that stage, abrasive in the worst way. And so when those things all kind of met, it was I had to find my identity as a man, and then as a journal. And that was hard, because my biggest mentor, Mark Johan, he's one of South Africa's biggest rugby writers, biggest sports columnists in the country. And his opinion carried a lot of weight, and his personality is like quite out there. And if I was abrasive, he's tenfold that. And so I was watching, but really naively watching, and like taking parts of him that onto myself. And I really had to unlearn. The main thing was that I had to unlearn a lot of that, and to inject my own personality, my own flavor, my own thinking, my own opinions, all of those types of things into my writing, and into my storytelling. And so that was kind of critical for me. So I grew up as a journo when I grew up as a man.
So it must have been, like you say, you try and mimic all these great people around you, and at the same time trying to find your identity. It must have been a roller coaster of emotions, in terms of trying to catch your breath, so to speak, and trying to establish, where do you fit in the grand scheme of things? Where do you see this going? Is this the type of person you are going to be in terms of the journalism arena? So I can imagine it must have been quite frustrating at times, having that pull where you're saying, well, I'm trying to be myself, but I'm also trying to learn from different people.
Yeah. So, what the biggest frustration was that I found myself in an industry populated by guys who had done that thing for 40 years, you know?
Mm,
And here I was like this young kid that came into the industry, sitting in this room that there's
mm,
quite like a hierarchical structure.
mm,
And it's like when I won't mention names, but I was at Loftus covering a game in 2006 or 7. I can't remember when it was, but it was early in my career. First
mm,
time at Loftus, went to sit in the front of the press box. And this particular journalist, well known throughout South Africa, like tapped me on my shoulder and told me like, you like rookies sit at the back, type of thing. Um,
You better learn the
and I was
protocol. Back of the bus.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, like I said earlier on, there's room for, I believe, completely in apprenticeship, and earning your stripes and that type of thing. But there was this backward mentality, in the rugby writing fraternity that frustrated me.
Mm.
And that same guy, I thanked when I won Sports Writer of the Year in 2009. I thanked him from the podium. Um, and I just gave him a little wave at that event.
It's a
But
Michael Jordan move,
um,
that one.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so that was the most frustrating thing for me. And
Mm,
it was ultimately would lead me to taking a break from it for a little while to explore
mm,
different dimensions of my creative gift.
mm,
And so the main frustration for me was this like this old school mentality, right? Like,
mm,
they were even the smallest things was frustrating for me. Like I would um, I would come into press conferences, dressed really well,
mm,
and I mean, I've got an interest in fashion, yes, but my professional pride is the most
mm,
important thing. You know, I'm sitting in front of our country's elite rugby players and elite coaches.
yeah.
I want to be presentable. I want to
Mm,
sit there and for them to take me seriously.
mm,
Um, and I mean, there's guys that would come like just like looking super scruffy, just like no personal pride. And I can only imagine as a player, you're sitting there looking at this guy going like, bruh,
yeah.
like what's he, you can't take somebody like that seriously. If you don't have pride in yourself, how do you have pride in your profession? You know what I mean? How do you take what you're doing seriously?
And
And
I
then there
think
would be,
just to interrupt while the thought pops into my mind, as rugby players, you're taught to be professional to the umpteenth degree. So
yeah,
obviously, your expectation of how everything around you should work in the professional arena, including journalists, should be the exact same way, the way you conduct yourself. So your
right.
mindset's exactly right. Hence why when we prepare for a rugby game or after match, we have to be presentable. We have to make sure that we understand how we present ourselves, how we present our brand. All these things carry weight. And
Right.
I think you were probably before your time in terms of understanding that concept and understanding how you should conduct yourself in a professional space.
Here's the thing, Waylon. Um, some players, a lot of players, think that um, rugby writers are this frustrated sportsmen that couldn't cut it in rugby, and now they had to find a way to kind of
Mm,
um, be involved in the game at an elite level somehow, right?
mm,
I think as a rule, that's that's not true. That might be the case for some of the guys, but
mm,
definitely not the majority of the guys. From my perspective, always was that if I like in the same way that your ambition was to
mm,
be a Springbok,
mm,
right, and to make it to the very elite level of your profession,
mm,
that was my ambition as well
mm,
in journalism.
mm,
I in my mind went, I'm going to be better than everyone in this room.
mm. Yeah, sorry, I don't
Is
know
it?
why it froze.
No worries, no worries. Where did you lose me?
Uh, just saying your ambition was to be
Right.
better
So
than.
in the same way that your ambition was to operate at the elite level of your profession, that was my ambition as well.
Mm,
And so when I came into a press conference, into a room with other media, I wanted to be the best in that room, right?
mm,
And so in the same way that it took sacrifice and training and all of those things for you to make it there, it took the same things for me to elevate myself. And I'm not saying that I'm the best in the country,
mm,
but that was my ambition. And so I always measured myself against the best in the world, not the best here, because
mm,
um, like I don't like we've got some really good writers here and some good journalists here, but the
mm,
best guys operate in Europe and in America. So
mm,
I would consume all of that content. I would like just consume that content and try to understand how they think, how they structure pieces, how they formulate opinions, all of those
mm,
things, day in, day out, watch
mm,
videos, listen to
mm,
podcasts, all of the same way that you trained, I trained as well. And so that was always my
mm,
ambition. That was always my mindset.
mm,
My mindset was, if
mm.
I'm covering elite level athletes, I have to be an elite level journalist because that is a professional level that we have to operate on. I can't expect you as a Springbok to be talking to some like donkey bra who's just got like a random blog and doesn't really think about his
Mm,
opinions and that type of thing. There's a transaction
mm.
that happens between me and an elite level athlete where we have to be on the same level. Otherwise, I'm wasting your time.
And I think that mindset that you have, it's imperative that you understand that the competition, and I think a lot of people don't understand the competition is not between you and another journalist or me against another rugby player. The competition is against yourself to extract that potential going forward. And I think often that's a
Right.
roadblock for many people because they get enveloped by how do I eclipse this person or how do I do that? Why is he doing that? Am
Yeah.
I doing something wrong? I need to outdo that person. So when you have
Right.
that sort
Right.
of tunnel vision and that belief in yourself that you know exactly where you're going, they might perceive you as competing with them, but you're actually not. You're trying to grow
Right.
yourself.
Right, and I had to learn that. Right, I had to learn that early in my career. It was a comparison thing. I was
Mm,
like, I want to be like him or
mm,
like her or whatever the case may be.
mm,
But then after a while, you realize that that your competition is yourself,
mm,
and that's exactly what you like that
mm.
scenario that you described now. That's exactly
And obviously, you spoke about relationships within the journalism community. Your relationship with players, I'm sure, is a difficult one. When you have to write maybe something that is critical towards their play, and then come in there on the Monday where you might have a relationship with this person, but now you've had to keep your integrity by writing what you honestly felt was correct. Has it been difficult at times to write certain pieces and then go to the training grounds? And I'm sure it must be hard. Some athletes must be like, oh, I don't want anything to do with Ryan today. He wrote this about me. Because that's one thing I learned. I said, I don't know, I think it was Warren Brits. Because as a young sportsman, when you eventually on that stage, you want to hear all the feedback. I'm doing great. You're
right.
reading the blogs, you're reading this.
Yeah.
But when it goes south, you want to crawl up into a deep crevice that no one can find you. So Warren Brits told me, he said, listen, dude, stop looking at what people say about you. It's not relevant. You have to get
Right.
up and next week's another story. And
Right.
if you all your energy is focused on how many people are praising you when it's good,
Yeah.
then you're doing it wrong. You're not
Yeah.
going to sustain this lifestyle for very long. So I'm sure
Right.
it's
Right.
the exact same scenario for a lot of sportsmen. They like to filter through what's being said, and it's
Yeah.
human nature again. You want to hold that personal grudge. Why doesn't this person think I'm
Yeah.
God amongst men.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I've tried to, as far as I can, keep my um, relationships professional with players, right? So you would know then that after it got like after our relationship got to the point where we were like, this is like a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
I not once in our friendship have I ever texted you or called you and asked you for
Mm.
any information on any
Mm.
rugby team that you played with or played against or anything like that, because our
Absolutely.
relationship had moved to a different level.
Mm.
And so, but for the most part, I've managed to keep my professional relationships just that. So
Mm.
it was hard. I mean, there've been circumstances. So early in my career, the Bulls and the Sharks were my beat, right? Those
Mm.
were the teams that I covered.
Yeah.
And there were situations where I'd be at Loftus at the practice, and that Bulls team was full of like big personalities and
Mm.
like players that were among the best in the world at the time. I
Mm.
mean, I don't need to tell you, you
Mm.
played against them in the 2007 Super Rugby
Yes, yeah.
final, but there were occasions there where it was and to add to the dynamic, it was this kid from Cape Town coming up and writing about us here in Pretoria type of thing.
Mm.
And there were some players in that World Cup winning squad that gave me a hard time.
Yeah.
That was that and me then going back at them because I wasn't going to be. So I'm not starstruck by any professional athlete. Like
Mm.
I'm not, right.
Mm.
So yeah, you're blessed with like extravagant motor skill,
Mm-hmm.
great. And lots of people watch you because it's the escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's brilliant, it's beautiful, it's the thing I love most. But you skin and bone and blood
Mm.
just like me. So I'm not
Absolutely.
starstruck by anyone. And so I would go back at those players like hard.
Mm.
And so that was early in my career. But when you get to a later stage in your career, you kind of grow with those players as well.
Yeah.
And they become more emotionally mature. And you realize that in the same way that they have bad days and I have
Mm.
bad days as well.
Mm.
And you might be writing a piece on that day that maybe isn't fair to the player, or kind of it's just not it's not spot on
Mm.
your opinion is not kind of cutting and insightful
Mm.
at that point. So then you get to a point later in your career where you recognize that you're in that
Mm.
space and you go like, I just maybe need to write this piece a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, the player would go, he would read that and go, you know what? I was average today. By
Mm.
my standard, I was average today. And then you can
Mm.
get to the point where I had conversations with players, often older players, where they'd go like, like the point you made there was good. It was great.
Mm.
And I would go, that piece that I wrote like a couple of years ago, that was so off the mark, and I apologize for that. And I went through this probably like 2-3 months ago now with Big Joe, right? With
Mm.
Joe van Niekerk.
Mm.
We just had this like ongoing like battle throughout our careers, right? Where Joe hated me, and I couldn't stand the
Yes.
guy because of how he treated me.
Yeah.
And then I dropped him a message on Twitter or Insta. I can't remember when it was. And I went like, let's chat about everything. Let's talk about your life, your career, everything that
Mm.
shaped who you are, that type of thing.
Mm.
And then we were able to go now as emotionally mature or more emotionally mature guys and go like,
Mm.
I can't believe that's kind of how we were at that stage. We were
Mm.
both like a childish mentality.
Mm.
And we had to both grow and learn and find ourselves. And so those relationships are tough, but I found it came easier as my career went on.
You could almost surmise that it's almost like a dysfunctional family, so to speak. Both of you are going to be around, not like the one is going to check out and disappear. Um,
Right.
so, I mean, at some point, you're going to have to make that marriage work, even if it's civil to that degree. You know what I mean? So I can imagine it must have been difficult at times, and you must have a really thick skin. So can yeah, we're back. Sorry,
Okay.
I said
No,
you must have had to develop quite a thick skin in terms of some days you the statue, some days you the pigeon,
right.
taking a you know what I mean,
Yeah.
offloading on the
Yeah.
statue. So I think it definitely ties into that dysfunctional family. And I think, I mean, as a rugby player, someone growing up, there were certain people I didn't want to see next to the field because you maybe read an article that you didn't quite like. But like you said,
Right.
that emotional maturity has to develop, and also
Right.
that growth is inevitable within yourself, because I think who is the most critical of one's performance, and I'm sure it's the same for journalists. You know,
Yeah.
if you've missed the mark. Same as a rugby player,
Yeah,
he knows
absolutely.
immediately if he's had a bad game. So emotionally he's
Right.
not in a good space, and then maybe he has to answer for some of these things to his coach, to a journalist, to a so that is probably not the greatest space to be in. But when you have that Sunday to
Yeah.
rest and you're going, well, this guy's not off the mark, but I can't exactly put out on my Twitter, I had a really terrible game. I need to apologize to
Yeah.
it, to
Right.
KZN
Yeah.
and whatever. But it's
Yeah.
just part and parcel of being human beings. And if you accept that relationship, you may be more understanding to each other's plights.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly like it, right? So I feel like broadly speaking, we've got like a fairly um unsophisticated rugby audience, and the rugby fraternity in South Africa is quite unsophisticated. I don't mean that like it's a bunch of barbarians or anything like that. Just that I mean in our thinking, right? In our thinking about the game and
Mm,
issues in the game,
mm,
that we've kind of got to develop that, and part of that is player media relations,
mm,
and so I think if we get to the if we get to the point where players feel more comfortable that they are entrusting their words to somebody that can craft it in a meaningful way,
mm,
then that is the kind of transaction that needs to happen. And then if you know that this, if you've played badly on the Saturday, you don't have to look at the papers in the same
mm,
way that if I know I've written a bad piece, I know I've written a bad piece, and I
mm,
kind of got to live with that, and then try and make up for that in the next piece that I write. In the same way
mm,
that you need to try and make up for that in your next performance. So
mm,
that type of transactional relationship is where we need to get.
mm,
But maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later. But I don't even think we'll get there because
mm,
there's a wave now, exactly like you're doing now, of players taking charge.
mm,
And what you're doing now is effectively the work of a journalist,
mm,
right? But players owning their stories, and that's such a powerful position to be in, because
mm,
you see it by the caliber of guests that you've had on your show, whether it
mm,
be Brad or
mm,
Beast or whoever it may be.
mm,
It just like the caliber of guests you are able to access
mm,
because of your connections to them through the game. And
mm,
players are moving in this direction now, which is really
mm,
interesting for me and exciting for me to see,
mm,
because that's great, because the type of content that you get out of there is
mm,
raw and unfiltered and like really really good stuff.
mm,
And LeBron, doing it with the shop and undisputed,
mm.
yeah, undisputed or undefeated. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, there's that trend happening now of players taking charge of the narrative and becoming media entities in themselves, which is like really exciting for me to see.
And understanding that obviously we're all human beings, like you said, regardless of what profession you are or
Mm.
what your hierarchy is in terms of South African society, having this opportunity to tap into a different conversation that maybe South Africa hasn't had before. I think
Right.
it is a good space to promote positivity and vulnerability, and maybe have some honest conversations. Just look. I think social media is a incredible platform in terms of what content you can put out there, but at the same time, it's a huge responsibility for what type of message you're trying to portray. So as
Mm.
technology continues to grow and expand, obviously that responsibility becomes a lot more um, scary in terms of what you put out and what you're trying to say. And like you said, then you can't get mixed up in terms of the message you're trying to give your community or followers.
Right. But that's the next frontier. I always wondered how where rugby specifically is going to go, like from a coverage and media perspective. And now you see it. Players are going to be the gatekeepers now. The
Mm,
players that want to are going to be the gatekeepers now, and people are going to go to players for their opinions,
mm,
and the analysis of the games, and as more and more people stop um, watching like super sport feeds, for example, as more people
mm,
start to kind of try to people are going to turn to these types of scenarios for the analysis of a game and or
mm,
analysis of an event in the game, and that is going to force journalists, and that's why I say it's a great thing. It's going to
mm,
force journalists to assess the validity of their careers, right?
mm,
Like what move are you going to make now? And
mm,
that's going to push the game forward from a like it's that's the next frontier for us now. Like
yeah,
so it's a game of chess almost. And so the players have made a move now. The players have made
mm,
a move, and increasingly this is going to become like a normal thing.
mm,
And so it's going to force traditional rugby media to make the next move. And I'm excited to see
mm,
what that is. I've got some ideas.
mm.
So yeah,
And I think that level of introspection during COVID has been amazing for players, and I think for the community at large that have been open to changing the narrative and how things are supposed to work. And you're getting a lot of these interactive sessions, which I think has forced people to maybe catapult themselves into a different digital space. And like you said, it's never going to be the same again. And maybe all that what's happened is the catalyst has been COVID-19 in terms of
mm,
making people understand or trying to get their message across, which I think for a lot of people it's been a good time to adapt and to try new things and to be creative with their content. So I think how you've used this time uh, has been obviously been invaluable, and I don't think a
yeah,
lot of people have, but I think a lot have used their creative space now to do really good stuff in terms of what their brand is, what are they trying to promote, what is their message,
yeah, yeah,
who are they
yeah,
essentially.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And you've seen it. I mean, I seen a great like piece on Sky Sports Cricket the other day. So it was with Nasser Hussain and Rob Key, two
Mm,
England batsmen. And they were picking the best team of their era. So Nasser Hussain's first 15 years, the team he picked versus Rob Key's first 15 years.
mm,
And they all done, they done it from home on their couch. Um, and um, and it kind of makes you ask like so there's I wouldn't wish this pandemic on anyone, right? On the
mm,
globe, it's been devastating in so many different ways.
mm,
But if you're looking for an upside, there's been an upside from a creative perspective. It's forced
mm,
people to think about what, like to think about the content creation in new and innovative ways, and
mm,
that's been exceptional because there's some really really good content out
mm,
there now
mm.
that we wouldn't, I don't think, would have been able to enjoy
Mm.
if the status quo had just remained intact.
Okay, look, I think we could have had like a 20-part conversation, and I knew this would
Yeah.
happen. All the questions I had lined up, I haven't even touched.
Yeah.
But maybe in closing, and I envisage that we'll have this chat again in the not so distant future. But in terms of sport gradually opening again, and obviously for us ardent Liverpool fans, we're very thankful that the victory parade can finally come. I'm probably going to get flack for this, but
Finally, yeah.
we've waited long enough.
Yeah.
Um, but with all the speculation of where's Super Rugby going and what's the next move for SA Rugby, maybe the final question we could maybe end on now, because I mean it's coming on close to an hour. Like I knew
Yeah.
we'd be chatting like two
Yeah.
guys at the barber shop.
Right.
Where do you see, maybe you have an inside check in terms of what do you think would be the best possible outcome for Super Rugby going forward and for SA Rugby at large?
So yeah. So just speaking broadly about Super Rugby before I speak about this current situation. So I think Super Rugby in general is a stale product, right? I can't remember the last time I was excited about Super Rugby. In fact, I can. It was 2009, probably
Mm.
2010. The last time I was excited about Super Rugby was I think the Bulls played the Stormers in the final 2010 at Orlando Stadium. That was
Mm.
that was 10 years ago. And even then, it was kind of a reach to
Yes,
try and become excited about this product because the
yes.
product is stale. It goes on for
Not
74
enough.
weeks,
Would you say
and
sorry to interrupt you, but would you say that
no, it's fine.
that innovation is clearly lacking? Because obviously, as a product, every year you're looking at ways to improve it, and maybe I don't want to say complacency, but maybe that innovation or creativity got lost along the way.
Right. So I think the game itself, if you're talking, so there's innovation in various facets of the game, right? So
Mm.
the game itself, the last big kind of jump that it took was the ELVs, which I thought was
Mm.
good for the game. It made it a better
Mm.
product,
Mm.
it made it more open, but still
Yes.
balanced and kind of fair.
Okay.
And so from an innovation point of view, I think the game is kind of where it needs to be now. But
Okay.
I think there needs to be more at stake in Super Rugby, right?
Mm.
You can't play for, I don't know how long this tournament is. I don't even know how long the tournament is because it
Mm.
just goes on forever and there's no incentive for teams to go on a streak, on a roll, because you can get into a wild card placing and somehow
Mm.
sneak into a quarterfinal scenario and then still win it from there. Um,
Yeah.
I think I think what this competition needs is to be reduced to 10 teams, one round of 10
Mm.
contested between 10 teams. If the Sharks play the Crusaders in Durban this year, the Sharks play the Crusaders in Christchurch next
Luck
year.
of the
As
draw.
simple
Yeah.
as that. As simple as that. The
Yes.
competition is over within 13 weeks. If you want to take some break weeks,
Mm.
competition's over in 13 weeks. What that then does is create a scenario where obviously pro players want to earn that European contract, right? Or a Japanese
Mm.
contract. In a
Mm.
scenario where Super Rugby is over in 13 years, it puts you in a
Mm.
better negotiating spot, right? You can say
Mm.
to Munster, you can say to Leinster, you can say to Panasonic, Red Dragons, or whatever the case may be there, that, you go like, I'm coming to you like a quarter of the way into your season. If you
Mm.
can create that type of scenario, you're able to retain your best players
Mm.
and for longer. And so it means that the quality of the competition and the games as a whole are better.
Mm.
And the product as a whole is better. The
Mm.
games mean something.
Mm.
Every game means something. Because if you lose two on the bounce,
Mm.
you are struggling to make a semi-final, right?
Mm.
And so I understand that there's so many pro rugby players in the country, and I mean, you want to give everyone a fair chance, but that's not life, right? The best will
Mm.
make pro careers.
Mm.
So we've got far too many pro players at the moment, and you watch a Currie Cup or some of the local domestic competitions. I feel like I know guys that could play in those competitions because the quality is so average. So we need to create a structure where the best players in our country are representing us at Super Rugby level, which is not the case at the moment. So that's the tournament as a whole. I think it needs to be done 13 weeks max. The product will be better. People will flock to the stadiums and watch it. And then there needs to be innovation for the viewing experience as well. So in the stadium, I always tell people this example. I went to go and watch in 2016, watched the New England Patriots played the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium in Jersey. The game goes on for 3 hours, bro. But you never feel it. You don't feel it because the fan experience is prioritized. And there's always something happening around you. And that makes you want to come back again and again and again. And so when all of those things merge together, that's the place Super Rugby needs to be at. What about our competition now? And I won't speak too long about this, but what about where we at now? I don't have an inside track here, but the Australia and New Zealand are definitely making, they definitely going to do their own thing. They're going to host an internal competition between the two countries. New Zealand and Australia are both kind of at the, they've almost completely eradicated the virus from the countries, leaving them in a great position to resume now. And because travel is so simple, couple of hours from Sydney to Auckland, whatever the case may be, it's easy to do that. So we've got to ask ourselves in South Africa, what's our next move, right? So I don't think Super Rugby. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to play a domestic type competition here to close out the season until an international season starts. If we have an international season,
sort of amalgamates the whole Curry Cup experience into one big mesh of whatever, just to salvage some sort of rugby season or bring some sort of finality to something.
Right. So I think what we should do, this would be my dream scenario. So if you eliminate Australia and New Zealand out of it, right? England don't know exactly where they at this point either. Ireland don't know, France don't know. All of those clubs are kind of in limbo at the moment. What I would do if I was a rugby entrepreneur, I would say, okay, Sharks, Bulls, Stormers, Toulon, Leinster, Munster, and you think of Racing, Metro, whoever it may be, some big names in rugby, create a scenario where we go okay, things are safe, things are a little bit better. Let's for 3 weeks host a Champions Trophy type of scenario. I mean, you can name it whatever you want to, and do a festival of rugby with some of the biggest names in rugby. That's what I would do if I was a rugby entrepreneur. More realistically, I think we're going to have a kind of a watered down domestic competition.
I see we're getting 2 minutes remaining on our darn it.
Okay, we got to say bye quickly.
But I think just maybe in closing, obviously, let's just call this part one because there's definitely going to be a few stages to this interview. But I think the Northern Hemisphere must be licking their lips at the possibility of getting these South African franchises in a contest. I can only think what that will do for their game and also our game.
Yes. Yeah, that's where the future is, man. We've got to be there.
Absolutely. So, Ryan, obviously, we're going to do this again soon. We'll call this chapter one of our story.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for just, having a conversation. It never sticks to script when we talk, and I think that makes it all the more interesting. And I hope people, even if it was one person, tapped into something they might not have seen or heard or understood. But thank you so much for what you've done for the game of rugby. I know it's a tough gig in your industry, but for you to be in this industry for as long as you have is absolutely incredible.
I appreciate you, man. Appreciate your platform and your friendship. Miss you, bro.
Right, we'll chat soon, Ryan. Thanks. Have a good
Yeah.
weekend, bud.
Cheers,
Bye.
mate. Cheers, bye.